Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Are you one of those people who stands on the bathroom scale in the morning and it literally can change the way your day goes because the scale's gone up 1 to 2 pounds out of nowhere? You didn't eat anything last night and you don't understand it. Well, we are going to change the way you look at scales. Welcome to Accelerated Health with Sara Banta, where I cut through the noise and fast track your journey to better health. I'm your host, CEO, and founder of Accelerated Health Products and certified by the National Association of Nutritional Professionals. And I'm here to share the latest on supplements, wellness hacks, natural health solutions that actually work. Imagine that. From boosting energy to detoxing to balancing hormones and everything in between. So let's dive in. I am so excited today because we have Julian Hunt. He is the visionary founder of HUME, the owner and creator of the Body Pod, a different type of scale that is going to give you some information way more than that bathroom scale that literally determines how your day is going to go. And he has a deep passion for human performance, innovation, and holistic health. He's created the HUME Body Pod, which is a breakthrough technology designed to accelerate recovery, enhance performance, and optimize well-being for athletes, professionals, and moms that are in their 40s like me. Welcome, Julian. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm great. And growing up in the 90s and looking at that bathroom scale, I don't know any woman who doesn't have a bathroom scale and literally will say, my day can be ruined or my day can be amazing, depending on what that number is. And what we are not looking at is what is making up that weight. Is it water? Is it the moon? Is it your hormones? Is it the fact you haven't gone to the bathroom? Is it the fact that you may have eaten a bigger meal the night before and you're retaining salt and water? So many factors that don't mean anything. And that's why I love the Body Pod. It has changed the way I look at my body, the way I look at the scale. And not just me, but my daughters who are athletes and their teammates as they are measuring their muscle growth and their endurance and using different supplements to do that, like the accelerated aminos, which was a fantastic example of where these girls are 18 years old. They don't care what they eat. They're athletes. They want to bulk, right? Not the typical girl. And they started doing my accelerated aminos and using the Body Pod once a week and showed muscle gain and actually fat loss. And they weren't worried about the water composition of their body because really it doesn't mean that much. So anyways, super excited to dive into here. Why don't you tell people your background and where you've come from to this point with the Body Pod?
Yeah, sure. For me, I originally went to school for physics, and my interest was taking things off this planet and putting them into space. But the market movement for that is not really environmentally friendly, and I pivoted into energy systems, distributed energy systems, and trying to change people's lives in that regard. And then the next step, as I went on my own health journey, was bumping into a lot of confusion and a lot of questions without answers, and going and working with personal trainers and with dietitians, and especially with this idea of every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, you hop on the scale and you weigh in and nothing. No change at all. And I'm thinking, I'm watching my diet every single day, and I'm going to my trainings every single day. And my dietitian on the one hand is saying, you need to cut your calories down further. You need to cut more sodium. And my personal trainer is saying, no, look in the mirror. Maybe the scale hasn't changed, but you've changed. And so there's been some fat loss, but there's been some muscle gain. And it's just coincidentally so similar that the scale hasn't moved. And the truth was that, yeah, when I looked in the mirror, My clothes were fitting better. My shoulders were a little bit bigger. This was the progress I was making. I could see it if I really stopped to look at it, but it's also just so slow day over day and week over week, or at least it can be. And so I wanted to ask, or it started to ask, like, isn't there a way that we can kind of look inside? And there is, in the form of DEXA scans, but that's a blast of radiation, that's not actually super healthy for you. And you should not be doing a DEXA scan more than, I'd say, about twice a year. And that's just too far of a window to wait and see. Is my training working? Is my diet working? Are my supplements on point? Like, what are the changes that I could be making just to squeeze out kind of more effectiveness per week? And that's what led into this newer technology, which is the bioelectrical impedance monitoring. But even there was still some gaps. It's largely based on population averages and comparisons to huge lookup tables and a lot of estimation, in which really it's secretly kind of one measurement, and then everything else is derived from there. And that's where the callback to that original position where I was in with physics came in. What if we measured you on all of these different types of tissues independently? So instead of just looking at one measurement that guesses everything, we're going to do 8 different frequencies. And also, what if we were to do composite measurements? So instead of just measuring from foot to foot, by adding in the Body Pod's unique handlebars, where we're measuring with your hands as well, we actually brought in some of that original aerospace technology that I was working on at this point almost 20 years ago, with how autopilot works, to just measure and measure and measure and measure, foot to foot, hand to foot, left to right, right to left. And each one of those is going to create a different image because of how it's traveling through your body. But if we layer all those on top, a very clear center image forms. And this is how we were able to get within that 3% accuracy of a DEXA scan, except you can do it every day. You can do it twice a day if you want, without any harm to your body. And that just changed the game for me, obviously, personally, but also for the athletes we work with, the moms we work with, the whole gambit of people who all have different goals and different things they're trying to accomplish. But in each version of that self, the Body Pod can now be that moment of truth of what is actually going on. How do I look inside? And even if, the mirror does make me feel good because I'm looking better, I can see that, specifically, I have lost this much fat. I have gained this much muscle, or maybe I am retaining this much water. And now even we're getting to the specificity of the different fat types between visceral and subcutaneous. We have segmented analysis, so I can see, is my right side bigger than my left, and do I need to change my training there? Or where is my fat actually changing its distribution? And so that android versus gynoid fat region has a huge influence by hormones. And so we're able to now see, are you experiencing testosterone reduction as a man? Are you starting to show early menopause scenarios for as a woman? Just so much more that we can get out of it because of the way we're doing these scans. So that's kind of a little bit of my history and into what we're doing now, kind of blended together.
I love it. One of the things that you mentioned is that it shows your right arm versus your left arm, and your legs, right versus left. That was something that I'm like, oh gosh, I need to work on my left side a bit more. And I carry a little more fat on my left side and less muscle, and the trunk, there is variation day to day. And so when I, as much as you can get obsessed with the bathroom scale, you can also get obsessed with the changes in the Body Pod. But what we're looking at is a trend, right? Right. So a couple of the things that I want to get into the technology, and then I'll start asking the questions of what can make those different changes day in and day out. But let's drive into the technology, because I love the fact that you said something about the DEXA scan. Not only is it inconvenient and it costs money, but the radiation. And I just did a podcast on the fact that thyroid cancer has exponentially increased due to more scans that people are doing, whether it's a mammogram or going to the dentist or going through x-rays or doing a DEXA scan. Any type of radiation, the thyroid is extremely susceptible to that. And the whole reason that you'd be doing a DEXA scan is to hopefully lose some body fat and gain some muscle. Well, with your thyroid getting damaged and more prone to cancer, you're not going to lose fat and you're not going to gain muscle. So that being said, this is where the Body Pod comes in and with such extreme accuracy. So let's talk about the technology and its unique features compared to some of the other scales out there. There's the InBody. There's like 1,000 different ones. If you look up Amazon, and you can get a scale for $50 off of there. Where's the difference, and why? How did you get it to be so accurate?
Yeah, there's this old adage is just more data is more better, and that's the big differentiator. Is that if you're getting a $50 scale off of Amazon, it's going to have only 2 electrodes in your feet, and it's going to send 1 frequency through your body. And honestly, it's not getting so we're sending a very, very, very small electrical signal, and we're traveling from one place to another. And what we're measuring is how much of that electricity is actually lost in that transference. So if you were just a solid copper wire, 99.9% of the electricity is making it through the other side. But you're not. You're made up of all these different components. And so as the electricity travels through you, some of it is lost. More would be lost from, say, bone or fat. Less would be lost through very conductive tissue like muscle. I mean, electricity is what makes your muscles contract. They're full of water. And so that little piece goes through, and they say, well, we lost about 30% of the signal. So you're about 30% fat, I guess. And you told us that you're a woman, and you said that you're 5'6". So you probably have, let me just look up in my table, you have this much bone. And that's it. That's the whole measurement. And honestly, I mean, if you're just looking for a ballpark measurement, you're going to land somewhere there. And in terms of measuring your trends, as long as you're not changing your bones, which most of us can't, I don't know anyone who can, you'll still be able to track if you're gaining or losing fat. But how much and where from, and were you even accurate to begin with? So you might hop on the scale as a bikini model and be told that you're 25% body fat. That's obviously wrong. Now, if you go on the Victoria's Secret diet and don't eat anything but a can of tuna and an apple for the next 5 weeks, yeah, you'll lose some body fat, but you'll still show up at 22% because you kind of started wrong, right? So what we're doing is we have 8 sensors. So there's 2 in both feet, and there's 2 in each hand. So right away, that's 4 times the number of channels. And then we're not doing one measurement. The different electrical frequencies travel through tissues at different rates and at different speeds. So the higher frequency ones, those will penetrate cells. And so we can actually measure what the intracellular water. So that's the water that you find inside your muscles. And we also do the lower frequency ones, which can't do that. And that'll travel through that extracellular water. So that's the stuff that you feel when you're bloated. And so we're taking all the different measurements, as I mentioned before, all those different angles, and we're measuring at all those different frequencies at 20, 50, 70, and 80. And each one of those is going to give us a different result, how much fat we went through. And then within that, was it visceral or was it subcutaneous? How much muscle, how much bone? And when we layer all that, because honestly, each one will paint a slightly different picture, you do get that really clear image that forms, like I said, when you just stack everything on top of it. One of it is the most true. Some a little bit fuzzy to the left, some a little bit fuzzy to the right, some fuzzy, but the middle is the true you. And so with all those different sensors, with all those different channels, we're just going to get that really crystal clear picture of not just the different tissue types, but the segments and everything like that. Yeah.
So one thing I want to point out is the extracellular and intracellular water. So, I talk about, oh, well, it's a full moon. You might be more bloated. You might be retaining water. You might be more constipated. Factually, last night was a full moon. I step on the scale 2 pounds up, and that could have made someone really upset, right? But I look at it, muscle's the same, fat's the same. It's all water. It's all water. And the moon moves the tides in the oceans. Why do we think it's not going to affect the body water of our bodies? But it just shows that if I had weighed myself with a regular bathroom scale, it would have done some mental damage. And by doing it here, it just, I love the fact that it breaks things down. Another example, and I would love for you to explain this, is if I do a weightlifting training, my weight will be up, my muscle will be up, my water will be up. The next day I go to hot yoga and my water's down, my muscle's down, and my weight's down. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. So the phenomenon that you're talking about is colloquially called the pump, right? So when you go to the gym and you get pumped up, well, you didn't just spontaneously gain muscle, despite the fact that your muscles are significantly bigger after you've used them. It's because they're full of water, and that water gets sent to the muscle along with blood to help it perform its functions. The more full of water it is, then the more leverage that the same muscle has during its contractions. And so we can influence this with supplements like creatine, for example, which helps usher water into the muscle cells so that it's just there on hand before you even worked out. And it also makes it easier to fill them with water while working out. We could also take some vasodilators. There are some people who like some off-label uses of certain bedroom medications because it really amps up their pumps if they're trying to perform or be visibly more competitive on the stage. And so what's happening there, if you are filling your muscles with water, your muscle does weigh more. It is literally heavier, and so you've technically increased your muscle mass. But what you haven't changed is the muscle fibers inside and the myonuclei, right? So those have remained the same. And so when we refer to things like muscle memory, when someone loses muscle because they change their diet and it rapidly comes back, it's because it's really actually kind of hard to get rid of those muscle fibers. They just deflate when they're not in use. So when you're going to the gym and you're drinking lots of water as your body's demanding it, all that water is going where it's doing its best work, which is inside your muscles, especially if you're training them hard enough to cause little bits of damage in there, then it's going to be inflamed and full of blood because it's healing. And then you went to hot yoga, which is, of course, going to encourage the body to let go of a lot of water. And one of the first places, or the first places we gain and one of the first places we lose water is in the muscles. So if you look at the Hollywood diet where they want to get super jacked for a specific photo, it's with massive amounts of dehydration first to get rid of all the water from the whole body. And then they'll guzzle water right before the photo itself, because the first place the body wants to put that water back is into the muscles. And that's how they get that paper thin skin, but those huge bulging muscles that are just largely unattainable. And within an hour, they don't look like that anymore. But the photo is forever, right? So the body pod is going to correctly be able to show you that, yeah, your muscle's up, but the water is what's driving that. Whereas the biological cell mass, which is a completely different metric, hasn't really moved at all.
So what is the biological cell mass? Because if someone is on a weight gaining, bulking journey, will that number change much?
Yes, it will. So that's like the beef jerky version of you. If we completely dehydrated you, what would be left? And so that's metabolically active tissue that is responding to electrical signals. So that would be the indicator of, am I gaining muscle tissue, or in extreme cases of osteoporosis where they've then been put back onto some kind of bone replenishing drug. They would see it also go up as their bones redevelop. That's kind of a very niche scenario. So largely, yes, you'd be wanting to track your biological cell mass and making sure that that's increasing. Now, if you're on substances that are giving you, you can get organ growth as well. That'll also show up there. But largely as adults, our hearts and livers and intestines don't grow anymore. So that's okay, unless you're taking performance enhancing drugs, in which case then, yeah, you're going to want to start to differentiate. We do actually separate organ tissue from lean mass elsewhere inside the apps, but the body cell mass is everything included.
Gotcha. Now, we talked about intracellular water and how that's related to muscle, and that's the good hydrating water. Talk about extracellular water and what that is indicating.
Yeah, so extracellular water, it's important too. We don't want to have none of it, but if you have more than about 30%, that's when you're moving into the bloating range. So you're going to hold that water in two scenarios. The main one that you're probably encountering is when you're losing fat. And so those fat cells, we talk about how fat cells never go away, right? Unless you get them permanently sucked out of you or frozen. The fat cell, once it separates into two fat cells, you've got two forever. And the way that they actually work is they're full of your fat. And when they're encouraged to let go of that fat, the chemical reaction actually requires water to go inside so that the fat can come out. So that relationship, that switch happens, and that water remains inside the fat cell, holding it full, holding it kind of open, so that when it's ready and fresh fat that you just made can go into the cell and the water can come back out. We don't really want to have these empty, flaccid cells inside of our bodies unless the time has come. And so if you're on a really great diet and you're exercising properly and you're burning through fat primarily during the day and then you're going to sleep at night, you're going to keep holding on to that extra water and then weighing yourself, wondering, why isn't the scale moving? Why is my extracellular water going up, but my fat's going down? And then you're going to have a day where you really need to go to the washroom and you're surprised because you've only had maybe one small drink, but you're going to the washroom 4, 5, 6 times in the same day. That's all that water. Finally, the hormone shift has caught up with you saying, yeah, you know what? We meant to lose this fat. That food's not coming back. We're not about to switch the script and put the fat back where we borrowed it from. It's gone forever. That's going to all come out of you as water. So that's the main reason why you'd hold extracellular water. But of course, it's all hormonally driven. Your body's powered by hormones telling it whether or not to keep water or not. So women are far more susceptible to these changes than men. But your diet can influence it as well. Sodium can influence it as a really common one. So if your minerals are imbalanced, which we also do show in the app as well, your inorganic mineral content. So that's your magnesium, potassium, and sodium. If your sodium's high, it's going to prevent fat cells from letting go of water. So you are going to hold on to that water as well. And just keep in mind that, unless you're only consuming sugar water, throughout the day, you're burning fat. Even if you're not exercising per se, you're still going to be burning fat just to survive and move. And then at night when you sleep, your liver puts that all back. So you are still constantly in this cycle of freeing up glycogen into your blood system so that you have fresh energy. And then at night, putting that stored energy from your day's eating back into the fat cells. So you're holding that water all day. So if you were to measure first thing in the morning and then measure all the way at night, chances are you're holding a significantly increased amount of water before you go to sleep than when you woke up. And then you're going to fix that naturally.
So that brings up, okay, so if your bladder's full versus you're constipated, how is that going to translate into numbers? Excess fat, excess water?
Yeah, so if your bladder is full, then you're just going to have extracellular water. It's water not inside your muscles. And if you're constipated, it kind of depends on the composition of what you ate. If you have a really high protein diet, it's where you're going to start fudging the protein-based numbers higher, but not too much because it's still not really connected the same way to your bloodstream and the normal pathways that we're sending electricity through. And if you have a really fatty diet, it's going to show up as fat because that is that tissue in there. And then if you're just holding fluid in your intestines, then I feel bad for you and you should definitely not go to work that day. But that would, again, show up as extracellular. So to get into that realm where you're being measured as intracellular water, it does need to be inside muscle tissue because the signal that we're sending is penetrating muscle tissue. And so it's traveling through water only located within that tissue.
So you should see your intracellular water increase as your muscle increases. Those two numbers kind of go together.
Exactly. As long as you're hydrated, right? So in some mythical world, like you're taking significant amounts of performance enhancing drugs and you are simultaneously like not drinking enough water, but still gaining muscle tissue, which again, like that's really hard to do. No, you wouldn't see them mirror each other. You can grow muscle without water, but your muscle is a sponge and it loves water. It wants a lot of water. It temporarily inflates beyond what it wants at homeostasis during a workout, but it just loves water. So as you gain muscle, you're also going to gain body water just in general. It's where a lot of the weight comes from. And this is where, when we look in scientific journals and health journals and they say you want to have about 56% or 50 to 60% body water percentage, again, those numbers are population averages and they're assuming certain things about you. So If you're a very lean individual, as a body water percentage, you might be in the 70s. If you're not a very lean individual, you might be in the 40s. And you might have both of those people getting now mixed results, where the super lean person says, I drink too much water, I need to cut down. And the larger person thinking, oh my gosh, I just need to drink more and more water. And they can actually be over drinking, and you can get sick. You might not believe this if you drink too much water. And of course, struggling with that frustration of like, why am I not matching these averages? And so again, something that's really great about the Body Pod is that your rating scale for body water is based on your lean tissue. So we're able to say, are you bloated today, or are you dehydrated today, and not just use some kind of generic number of, well, you're at 56 and so that's good. Well, maybe not good for you, Sara, because you're super lean, and maybe that's remarkably high for me because I'm not super lean, but getting the real numbers and really what you should be doing.
Yeah, the numbers of the water and the percentage, that was one of those numbers where I'm like, gosh, why is mine so high? It was high compared to some other people that I was looking at their scans. But it's also something now that I realize I just watch me compared to me, apples to apples.
Yeah.
So let's get into the fats. There's subcutaneous fat that it measures. There's the visceral fat. I also love that not only do you measure the percentage, but you measure the exact poundage or the exact amount, so people can look at both numbers. So there's visceral, subcutaneous, and total body fat. Can you describe what those are?
Yeah, so subcutaneous is the fat that we generally think about. It's the fat that's in between your skin and your muscle. It's the visible fat. And it's kind of the least important fat for anything other than aesthetics. But throughout history, because we haven't really had this technology, it's a general indicator of overall fat. So you typically will have about 15% to 20% of your total fat is visceral. And that's the other type. That's the more scary type. That's the part that's inside the torso, behind the abdominal wall, and it insulates all of your organs. So it does actually have a role to play. It's also metabolically active, is connected to your bloodstream, and it's kind of the brown fat we talk about. If you were to pull it out of someone, I don't recommend that, but if you were, it's got that different coloration, and it's the far more dangerous fat, because that's what's going to also be a precursor for heart problems, as well as suffocating your organs where they're not getting enough blood just because they don't have surface area. The fat, instead of suffocating them, that's your fatty liver, that's your plaque inside your arteries, that's all of the negative stuff. So that visceral fat. The good news is that visceral fat is more dense than the subcutaneous fat. And so we're able to actually measure the difference. And that was a big jump forward for us. We're not just saying, hey, you know what, you have roughly this much percentage body fat, and therefore a percentage of that percentage is this much visceral fat. That's where the competitors lie. But by measuring them separately, we can look specifically at what's going on. So someone who's, for example, had liposuction surgery is going to have disproportionately high visceral fat compared to their subcutaneous, because they've affected the natural distribution. But so even if most of us do have a consistent pattern of about 15 to 20% one and 80% the other, not all of us do. The other indicator is that we all respond differently as well. So some people, their fat is actually marbled within their muscles. And so looking at visceral fat from that perspective versus just subcutaneous is important to differentiate like how I'm gaining and how I'm losing fat. So subcutaneous is the aesthetic one, like I said. Visceral is the health one that we're more concerned about. And we did want to differentiate them. And you mentioned another thing that we do differently, and we draw a lot of attention to it, is that body fat percentage versus body fat mass. And that's something very, very critical when it comes to training, because when you think about percentages, I could go gain muscle and as a consequence lose body fat percentage, but I haven't actually lost any fat. I have the exact same amount of fat as I had yesterday, but I just weigh more now because I put on a bunch of muscle. So as a percentage, my fat went down. But from a health risk, I've actually reduced none of my health risks, and I may have increased some of them because now I have more muscles demanding more blood, and I have just as much fat kind of carrying around on me. So we want to show we show them side by side, and we indicate what they mean and what you're trying to accomplish, because someone who's in the 200 pounds of muscle range, getting to 18% body fat's not hard for them. Someone who's in the 100-pound body range at 18% is quite difficult. But comparatively, if we looked at just the mass of fat that's on those two people, it might be the same. So we want to be able to draw all those different separations and then change our diet and our training accordingly for what we're trying to accomplish. Generally, that's to reduce the subcutaneous fat so we look better. That's the kind of the goal for most people. But the visceral fat's the real one that we want to be pushing down as best as we can. And that's where making sure that not just what you're eating as in foods, but how you're supplementing is going to make a really big difference on whether or not you're actually liberating that visceral fat without going into like deep caloric cuts, because that's also not a healthy place to be.
Right. So the lean body mass, is that, what does that include? Does that include everything other than fat?
Yeah, as the name implies, that's the everything metric, so that isn't fat, minus the extracellular water, because that's not counted either. So so it's not quite beef jerky you, but it is on the road towards eliminating what we don't consider you. So your bone is in there, your organs are in there, and your muscles are in there, as well as the water that's inside the muscles and organs.
So no extracellular water. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
How can the meal the night before affect your skin?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, right? So primarily it's within those inorganic salts that I mentioned. So if your ant is holding a lot of sodium, you're going to hold a lot of water. So that's going to change your scan. And if you're taking a ton of potassium and magnesium, you're not only going to have really bad muscle cramps if you work out the next day, but you're going to evacuate a lot of that water. And so you're going to be pretty dehydrated. And so unfortunately, there's no way to tell salt from potassium from magnesium apart from any kind of scan. But what we can do is draw the inference, right? So if your extracellular water is high and your inorganic salts is high, that's evidence that you have too much sodium. And if your extracellular water is low and your inorganic salts is high, then we know that you have too much magnesium, potassium. And so you can modify your diet that way. Those are kind of the real influencers. And then, of course, like I said, if you're eating a super fatty meal, like you're one of those butter coffee folks, that is going to show up for you, as well as having a little bit more fat. But you'd need to eat a considerable amount when we're talking about diet impacting anything other than water.
And will that show up as trunk fat, like literally in your stomach? So it's not going to show up as fat on your shoulders or in your legs. It's going to literally show. Oh, that's really interesting. We are almost out of time. I can't believe it, but I wanted to hit it also measures your metabolic age. And I can brag, at 49, my metabolic age is 36. So super excited. I love seeing that. So anytime I don't love the other numbers on my scan, I'll just focus on that one and say, okay, I'm doing okay. But what was interesting too is that my young daughter, who's 18, athlete, and all of her friends, so they're 18, they were showing up at 23, metabolic age of 23, which was interesting. So let's talk about what that number means.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have benchmarks for what the expected metabolism is for people in different age groups. And if you go online and you just type in like, what is my BMR? Those estimations occur by taking your total weight, and they use a formula and they say, this is how many calories that you burn at rest, right? And it's largely inaccurate because your fat doesn't burn any calories. So someone who is morbidly obese, who's struggling to lose weight and is not having any success, well, it's because they used one of those calculators and it told them to eat 3,000, 5,000 calories a day, 3,500, I mean to say, calories a day. And in terms of the woman or man on the inside, underneath all that fat, it's 2,000 calorie a day person. So they are following their diet. Just bad news is they're still overeating. What we do to calculate your BMR is only look at that metabolically active tissue. So that's your organs, your muscle, and then the brown fat, if you have enough of it to actually make a difference. And then we're looking at your activity for your NEAT and all this other stuff that's kind of stacked on top. And we compare that by kind of reversing that other formula for, well, if this is your real metabolism, where does that actually fit in terms of the world's benchmarks of the person who's the same gender and age or the same gender and height as you? How does that factor in? And so if you're someone who has a higher muscle mass or more smooth tissue, you're going to have a much higher BMR than someone who has less. And so that's either going to lower or potentially raise, in your daughter's case, metabolic age, because if they have more tissue than someone around their own age, well, then they're going to be showing up older, right? Because we don't really stop growing until about 25.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Well, where is the company going? Where's the technology going? Or is there anything, any other metrics that you guys are working on that will show up on the scale?
Yeah, something we're really proud about is that the scale itself is a little over-engineered. So there's more in it than we needed. And we're introducing new metrics regularly. The ones we just did is the android gynoid ratio for fat. So drawing that differentiation, like I said, because of the hormone indicators, we added the metrics for the symmetry and upper lower balance. And our next phase, and maybe I shouldn't say it because now our competitors are going to wonder how we did it, but we're actually splitting the trunk. So by using the same signals, we have enough data now, so we'll be able to separate the pelvic region. So for women really trying to grow the booty, that's now they can isolate and look at just the tissue that's going on there from the thorax. So you're going to be able to look more at the stomach. And that's just another level in that precision, because that's really the area when we say trunk, and that's from neck to butt, that's kind of a long segment. So if we can split that again, it's going to help with more training data and more information about whether or not this is working for you, that's working for you. So that's the next phase for us.
Okay, I just had an aha moment with the trunk, muscle mass, and then the fat. So if that fat is increased, it's not just your belly, but it could be your booty as well.
Yeah, and so maybe that's what you want,
Right, exactly. So that metrics would be really important. I love all of this. And, as we've talked before, we have supplements that work on body composition, building the muscle, dropping the fat, increasing the metabolism. And then, of course, it's all about quality of life and having energy. That's why we do all of this stuff. And the scale is just, it's just such a great, how do I say it? I mean, I can always look at the scale, even on a bad day, and find something positive. Because if the number is up, then okay, Sara, it's okay, because you're just retaining a ton of water, or you got a good pump and your muscle's up. Or, the scale's down, and your muscle might look a little lower, but it's because you sweat out a lot at hot yoga, and the water's down and the fat's down. And so there's a lot of things, or you could say, okay, all these numbers, I don't like any of them, but look, my right arm, it got stronger today. So there's a way to make it positive every time. And the one thing I do want to emphasize is that you want to look at the trend and not look at the everyday change, because there are days where my muscle will change 2 pounds overnight, and that's not real. That is, right. That's influenced by, diet, sleep, exercise, water, all of these other factors. So you just want to look at the trends. But it is a lot more specific and gives you so much more data than the stupid bathroom scale that literally is mind warping you. So throw them away or give them to the neighbor that you don't like. And the beauty of the Body Pod is it's not expensive. I mean, it is. The price point is so reasonable, and we're going to put a link below to purchase it, and then also some of the supplements that can help you change that body composition. But Julian, you are brilliant, and I'm so excited to have you on and explain all of these numbers, because it can get confusing because we're not used to seeing all of these numbers. And the fact that you're offering technology so someone doesn't have to go get a DEXA and get confused and get exposed to that radiation and then pay out of pocket. It's fantastic. So Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything that we did not cover that you want to make sure the listeners know?
Well, I think you really hit the nail on the head with how those numbers can change and on the daily and what that means. And so we've tried to introduce a couple features that alleviate that with our milestone system, which takes your goal and it breaks it down into manageable chunks. And we find that at each one of those milestones, that's around the right time that you should actually look at how much change went on, so you can assess whether or not what's working for you. Are you losing primarily muscle because you're dieting too hard? Okay, well, great. You've lost some weight, but I don't think you wanted to lose that weight. And then we also have our monthly health reports, which do a comprehensive look where we're cross-referencing with your phone's activity data and your sleep data, and we can see if that's influencing your changes and putting some context there. And so we have some stuff that kind of zooms out a little bit, as well as if each one of the measurements is super zoomed in, so that you can get as much or as little information as you're looking for, depending on where you are in that journey. And then absolutely check out, we have a number of articles on our website, and you can click into any metric and read for more descriptions. It's all there for you. I think we covered just about everything with the Body Pod, at least for this amount of phone calls. We can talk about the macro level research studies that we do and stuff at another time.
Awesome. I look forward to it. We'll definitely do that. So thanks again, Julian.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're encouraged, but I am, and I love this Body Pod. It is making me focus on the muscle. Every time I see that muscle go up, it's a dopamine hit. And every time I just see my body composition change, I feel like a stronger woman. I feel more powerful in mind, body, and spirit. And especially as women, we should not try to become small human beings, because muscle is a sign of longevity. So with that being said, I just want to mention a couple of the supplements that help you change that body composition, increase muscle mass while you're losing the fat and staying healthy and increasing energy. And number one is accelerated fast. I don't talk about this supplement very much, but I take it every day. It puts you into a little state of ketosis, helps with that fat burn, teaches your body to burn its own fat, gives you the energy to work out in a fasted state. And so it's burning your fat while maintaining that muscle mass. And the ingredients also increase the spark to actually teach your body to produce more ketones, turning the fat into ketones. It is a game changer. But with that, I take my accelerated aminos and I take them before my workouts. This weekend I had forgotten them and I tried to go work out. I'm like, where's my energy? And you can feel it, because the accelerated aminos is not just the essential amino acids that you need to maintain that muscle mass that everyone talks about, but the cofactor ingredients. HMB prevents muscle breakdown, increases strength, enhances fat burning. Estrogen, no one puts this in a formula like this. It boosts the absorption of your amino acids, so you're actually getting more bang for your buck, and it's helping heal that leaky gut so that you are increasing absorption of all the nutrients your muscles and tissues need besides just the protein. And then Synactive, another ingredient that is a game changer, speeds up muscle recovery, clearing out the old fatigued cells, activating new muscle cell regeneration. OKG, orotic acid, TMG, these all help with ATP production in the mitochondria, helps with methylation, muscle hydration, endurance, while helping with the fat burning. This is going to give you the energy to work out harder while maintaining and building muscle. I had gone through a health crisis last year and I lost muscle mass. My body literally was burning up from the inside. And so I had to go hard on building my muscle back up. And with the accelerated aminos, literally didn't change what I was eating because I'm so boring and I eat the same thing. I actually don't even need to eat as much protein as I was eating. I've put on 10 pounds of muscle. and I feel amazing and I feel strong and energetic, and it really has changed my workouts and my blood sugar and my stabilization throughout the day. I take it before my workout. If you need a therapeutic dose, take a second dose after your workout, and you can even take it right before bed to help encourage growth hormone and blood sugar stabilization during sleep. With that, you want to add in the accelerated or acceleradine iodine. This is the metabolic plug. We talked about thyroid. Your thyroid health determines your fat burning, your protein synthesis. You need iodine for protein synthesis in the muscles, and it is really important for the fat loss. So it is the master switch for your thyroid and metabolism. That thyroid hormone activation is done through iodine. It's required to make the T4 and convert it into T3. 4 and 3 molecules stands for iodine. So you can't have T4 and T3 without iodine. It displaces the toxins like the halogens that cause the body to store fat. It increases ATP in the mitochondria, helps with all of your hormonal regulation, balancing estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. So those 3 supplements, accelerated fast, accelerated aminos, accelerated iodine, are going to help your body change its composition, increase the muscle, decrease the fat at the same time. People say that's impossible. It's not impossible. And I'm proof you can do it. So together they'll help with the fat oxidation, building the muscle, increasing your workout and endurance and recovery. Whether you are a teenage girl or boy doing a sport, or a 60-year-old man, or a hormonal menopausal woman, we all can benefit from using the Body Pod composition scale and the supplements to change your body composition and increase your vitality and quality of life. So thanks for tuning in today to Accelerated Health with Sara Banta. I hope you got some tools and inspiration to take the next step on your health journey. Head to SaraBantaHealth.com for articles and more, and join the free group coaching. You probably have a question. Post it in there. I post daily to keep you moving, whether it's an article, a health tip, or a podcast, to get you focused and taking control of your health again. You can find the supplements at acceleratedhealthproducts.com using coupon code podcast10 on your first order. If you want to get the HUME Body Pod, the link is below, and it will automatically give you my 20% off. It is a no-brainer. It is not expensive. It's a one-time fee, and it gives you so much data. You can find me and all of my podcasts by searching Accelerated Health with Sara Banta on over 100 different platforms, including Apple, Spotify, YouTube, E360, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Roku, and so many more. Remember, I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so join me next time for more ways to unlock your health potential.